In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Please be seated. Well, it is that time of year. Yes, it's that time of year. I was seeing it in my neighborhood yesterday. All the people outside, all of a sudden trash bags are being thrown in front of the place. It's that time of year for spring cleaning. I started getting antsy knowing that I need to clean my office, my garage, house. It doesn't matter. I just at this time every year get that itch that I need to start working on it. Why? Because just like your family, my mother did it every year. If Mom did it, it must be right. You remember this? You remember your parents doing this? I remember my mom and grandma cleaning the house every spring and fall, but especially the spring was the big one. And this was a serious day. You didn't go play, you didn't do any of that. You were there, ready to hear whatever Mom had to tell you. I can remember the windows being open and the smell of spring coming through, and you could smell the screens. Do you remember that? The screens would start smelling, and you just knew what day it was. And of course, Dad and I had our job. We had two jobs. One was washing the windows. The other was doing whatever Mom told us to do. You always listen to Mom. And of course, Mom had labeled things in our house as clutter. And there's two things you do with clutter in my house. You either organize your clutter or you throw it out. Those were your two choices. I didn't like the particular day because I knew that there was going to be a lot of work, a lot of hard work for chores. Plus, Mom always liked to do it on Saturday, and I wanted to go out and play, but I knew that day was cut. But what I did like was the end result. The end result, even though Karen, my wife, still laughs to this day, she said I was raised in a museum. And she probably was right, because everything was in its place. I liked it because the house really smelled good. Remember the Murphy soap oil and all of that smell, and everything just smelled so fresh. I liked it because everything looked just a little better and nicer. And I could find my stuff because, well, there was no more clutter, so thank you, Mom, she was right. But it also just felt good. It felt good like new clean sheets on a bed. It just felt good to be in your room and looking around at everything in its proper place. Let's face it, we all know this feeling, and that's why many of us do the spring cleaning each and every year. This is why my itch to clean is coming back. Last week I looked at my office and I looked at it again. And Marilyn asked me, what are you doing? And I said, well, I think I need to start cleaning. I need to start reorganizing, and I need to get rid of what Mom would call clutter. Lots of clutter. When things are a mess, it can stop us from finding things, from being organized. It can even stop you from doing your job. And there is nothing worse than drives me crazy than wasting precious time looking for things, preventing me from doing the job that needs to be done. A great example of this happened to me recently when I witnessed as I was running, and I try to run every other day or so, and I was running by this particular building that they are working on. There's lots of construction going on in Heath right now. But one in particular I would watch as the workers every day were doing their job. And one of the things that I noticed is they were starting to throw their building material out front, and the piles started getting bigger and wider and higher. I was watching as they were throwing their material out of the upstairs window and off of the roof. And I started to laugh because a lot of this was starting to spread. It was wood and building material that kept piling up outside of their front door. I started laughing one particular day because it got so high that these guys were trying to carry in something. There was two of them in a box, and they were trying to get over this mound of stuff to get inside the building. I didn't know what genius decided to come up with this organizational chart, but it didn't work. And I wasn't the only one who thought that. Obviously, they must have hired a new foreman, because suddenly there was a big dumpster. I was running by one day when I had to laugh because I started watching these workers who kind of looked like they were kids who had been yelled at, starting to pick up all the material and throwing it into the dumpster until eventually they had a great big cleanup and it worked. Suddenly, you could see them throwing all their stuff away, and they could get back to work, starting to take the material and walking into the door instead of climbing a mountain of wood. So their clutter was no longer preventing them from working on their building. You may ask, well, what does this have to do with Jesus? I wouldn't blame you if you did. But in the gospel today, we see Jesus actually doing some spring cleaning of his home. In the gospel, John's gospel today, we see this particular, we know this particular story. But just a side note, we notice that it's happening before the Passover, but a little bit earlier than we see in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. In Matthew, Mark, and Luke, we see it during when? Holy Week. And so I just wanted to show you, but it really doesn't matter. I just love to give you little side notes to these things. It doesn't matter when it happened, but that it happened. Either way, what has happened now is Jesus has truly upset the authorities, and they will start the process of getting rid of Jesus once and for all. Jesus, it says, goes to the temple. He sees the people selling animals for sacrifice. He sees the money changers. He sees coins with the faces on it, which is a huge taboo in Jewish culture. He sees the temple tax authorities, and he sees the money changers doing their job. But what he's really upset with is the money changers can be quite dishonest. What their job is to take coins from all over the world that have graven images on there. They have Caesar and other pictures that are on, and you're not allowed to bring that near the temple. And so what they would do is they would exchange those coins and give you kind of temple tokens, if you want to say, out of silver, etc. And it's supposed to be the same exchange rate. The problem is it's not always the same exchange rate, and a lot of times for the money handlers it was in their favor. And so Jesus is watching this happen. The money changers were dishonest with the money even at the temple and taking advantage of the poor or the ignorant. And this upsets Jesus. Jesus gets so upset with this behavior because he sees the marketplace as a corrupt entity inside of a place of holiness, poisoning the whole place and the system itself. What he sees in the heart of man, he sees greed. He sees unethical behavior. He sees stealing. He sees graven images. He sees coveting of people's things. And he sees not honoring each other, even though he tells them they need to love one another. What he is seeing is people and things coming between God and God's people, especially the temple authorities. All of it together for Jesus is what Mom would call clutter. And there's only two things to do with clutter. Either you organize it or you get rid of it. Jesus decides to go into the cleansing mode. Get rid of it. He takes a cord and he makes a whip and he drives out the animals. He then comes and he turns the tables over and he pours out all the coins all over the place. If you've ever had a cash register when you were a kid when you were working and dropped one of those, you know what a disaster this can be. This is going to take hours to get all put back together. The temple authorities are extremely upset with Jesus. But notice the temple authorities don't tell Jesus that he's wrong. Did you notice that? They don't tell him that he's wrong. What they want to know is by what authority Jesus did this. You see, they've heard about Jesus. They know Jesus. They know Jesus' miracle and healing, which is starting to make them a little on edge. And they've heard of Jesus' teaching. And they want him. And the question in itself for the authorities is a trap, a way to trap Jesus himself. But notice how Jesus always seems to get out of these traps. He's truly listening to he already knows what's in the heart of man. And so Jesus boldly tells them by what authority he has it, by telling and talking about the temple. He tells them, or he gives them the big picture of talking about his body. He says to them, tear down this temple, and I will rebuild it in 3 days. They don't understand that he is talking about himself. Instead, they laugh at him and say, this place has been under construction for 46 years, and you're going to build it back in 3 days? What Jesus is trying to tell them, he's not just in the temple, he is the temple. He is the temple. He has told the disciples exactly what's going to happen, and it says that after the resurrection, it dawns on what he was finally talking about. What Jesus is showing is his real authority over all. Jesus has the authority to cleanse the temple, to heal the lives that have been hurt. Jesus has the authority to save and to bring God's people back to God. And he does it with spring cleaning. He does it with spring cleaning on that particular day of the temple, trying to make it right. So my question today is, what about us? What in our lives need to be cleansed? What is it? Last week we talked about what are the things that are blocking you from truly having your relationship with Christ, to pray and to worship, etc. This week we are talking about how do you cleanse it once you've identified it. What are the things that are preventing us from worshiping Christ, following Christ, talking with Christ, or giving oneself to Christ? This is what Jesus is seeing from the system that has been put into place by the so-called authorities. This is what makes him so angry. Jesus is against anyone or anything in our lives that stop us from truly getting to know, love, and follow Jesus. Jesus' issue was with the temple authorities, the high priests, the Pharisees, the scribes, and the temple priests. They are not bringing people to God. They are controlling people through God, controlling people and their things, and this is upsetting Jesus. This is why Jesus needed to spring clean the temple, taking back his authority, and he does this on the cross. He will spring clean for all of us, wiping away the sins through the resurrection. Let's be honest. We all need spring cleaning also. We need spring cleaning. All of us do. We need to cleanse whatever is in our way, preventing us from truly praying or worshiping or being with Christ. This is why we need to always spring clean in ourselves during the time of Lent. Another thing is an example that we do is this is why we'll be having a spring cleaning here at the church here in a few weeks. A good old-fashioned church cleanup day so that we can clean, so we can organize, so we can get our closets organized again because God knows they need it, and so we can work more efficiently. But honestly, it's bigger than that. You see, a church cleanup day, it should be a symbol for all of us that we need to clean in our own lives. We need cleaning because cleaning can heal us from things in the past. Things that may have hurt us, things we have not forgiven about, that are just hanging and clinging on to us. We need to clean it. We need to clean things to help us be free. Those shackles that we have talked about that hold us away from God. Those things in our past or in our future or even around us that may be holding us down from truly worshiping and just being loved by God. We also need to clean so that we can truly step into the future. Because if we haven't dealt with the past, then how do we deal with the future? And that's where God is calling all of us. We need to rid the things that have authority over our lives, the things that are preventing us from being with Christ. And it is during this Lenten season that we need to be just like Christ. We need to identify those things that are blocking us and need to be clean. We need to change these things in our lives, even if it means turning over the tables in our own life. We need to grab a whip and we need to move things out of our life that are blocking us. We need to be clean. Every year, as I said, my mom would do spring cleaning. Truly, even if it was against my wishes, it was good for us. It helped us. It organized us. And let us work into the future. But Jesus wants us to have a spring cleaning in Lent also. And that's one of the reasons for Lent, is to let us step aside to begin that cleaning process. Why? Again, it's good for our relationship. It's good for us to see the big picture. It's good for our souls. Clean the clutter from your life this Lenten series so that you may be ready on Easter with a clean, new temple. You. Go. Do it. And ask for God's help, because Christ is right there ready to help you because He loves us so much. Amen.